I am launching my Grounded Awakening podcast, where we have conversations connecting science and intuition and connecting the mind, the body, and the spirit. I'm really excited to be starting this. I'm going to start this just with the videos, and then eventually we're putting it up on Anchor FM and Spotify and all those places that we do. All those places that we do stuff. Thank you, whoever said happy birthday. It's my birthday. Whoop, whoop. I am entering my goddess years. I still have another year before I, really enter the goddess years. But hey, I see my friend Bonnie. Woohoo. Bonnie is in the house. So as we wait for people to join us, for you, Bonnie, this goes out to my Bonnie.
Oh yeah, I know this song. I got my ginger and turmeric, and I'm laughing.
I have my ginger turmeric too.
This is what it comes down to. No more tequila.
So
that's a great way to start. Great way to start.
I love that it says doctor. Yeah, girl. All right. Wow.
We were all engaged to doctors at the time. We'd be like, doctor!
Oh yes. So that is Bonnie and I go way back. Bonnie, you and I have known each other for almost about 20 years, which is crazy because we're far too young for that. You know what I'm saying? A little background for those of you that maybe don't know who I am Jennifer Rentolo. I am an RN and I am a whole health educator and patient advocate. My passion is helping mothers and children, particularly children with invisible disabilities, connect to their own inner strength, connect to their mind, their body, and their spirit needs, and really take back their power over their own health and happiness. And one of the things that my challenges with my kids, I have one son that had a massive neonatal stroke at birth, and I have another son that had went through leukemia. One of the beautiful things that they have taught me, and they are my biggest teachers, is they really showed me the gaps in healthcare. They showed me the gaps between science and intuition. They told me the gaps between what we know for fact and what we need to be open to. And so that's the purpose of me starting this podcast series called The Grounded Awakening, because I really believe that it is time for us to awaken to our spirituality. We need to reconnect, I believe, to our spirituality. We need to reconnect to ourselves and tune out the outside world, because it's the outside world that spins us up and that kind of takes us away from ourselves. And so I wanted to have Bonnie on as my first guest because Bonnie was a huge part of my own awakening. And I call it the grounded awakening because I really believe that it's important for us to have 2 feet firmly planted on the ground, anchored and steady in what is the reality of what is, the reality of what's going on around us. I really believe that it's important that we have the knowledge, the science to inform our decisions, but that we also integrate that with our experiences and with our intuitive knowing of that spiritual connection of what's the right thing for us and what it is that our mind, our body, and spirit are telling us, and what it is that they need and how we can be in alignment with that. So that is the purpose of this podcast in this series that we are launching live. And this is exactly why I have my dear friend Bonnie on with me. So thank you, Bonnie, for coming and celebrating and being my first person on my Grounded podcast, my Grounded Awakening podcast.
I love the title. It's a great title.
Thank you. So let me tell you a little bit about Bonnie. My Bonnie, I did say she was part of my awakening. Bonnie trained me in Reiki. And I remember when she first did Reiki on me, I was like, that's cute. Your hand's hot. Didn't understand it at all. Bonnie has spent most of her career training healthcare professionals in Reiki and yoga. For 16 years, she served as director of yoga programs for the University of Maryland Center for Integrative Medicine, where she has helped implement programs deep into the healthcare system. Today, she enjoys private coaching, which allows her to contribute to support and train a large and diverse community of healthcare professionals that she has met over the past 20 years. Bonnie is also married to a surgeon like me. That's how we met, through our husbands. And Bonnie is the proud mother of 3 incredibly beautiful, wonderful, amazing children. I got to say, I got to brag a minute for your Maya, who is, what is the name of the organization she works for? She really about connected and purposeful.
Yeah, there's an organization in California called I Can Help that was originally designed to kind of target and shut down like cyberbullying in schools. And it expanded to really reaching out as a platform on social media to grab kids so they could find good resources for mental health. And the spectrum from like very serious situations to like just really being sad and not having anyone to really talk to. And so Maya's she actually has a position in the company, and she manages their TikTok rollouts and gets really good positive messages out through their TikTok. It's been an incredible experience for her.
Yeah, and she's 16. Is she even 16 yet? She's 15.
16. Yeah.
She's 16. I mean, she's 16. Hello.
She was on a call last night, and she was on a call with 12 superintendents throughout the country, and they were asking questions because she just is like, if you're not making your school safe for kids to feel and talk, your school's not teaching anything worthwhile. That's basically what she said. So.
Well, you know what? But you have raised very powerful kids, very empowered kids. And for all of you out there, they're like, oh my God, my 16-year-old would never do that. My 16-year-old would never do that. My 16-year-old's very introverted, very shy. But you know what? They all have a purpose. And it's our purpose, I believe, as parents, to really help our kids understand who they are and where they fit in the grand scheme of things. Not who we want them to be or who we think they should be or how to keep up with the Joneses, but how to really awaken them to who they are and to their own spiritual connection. So that's my question for you is, what do you think the key is to helping your kids connect and awaken to their spirituality and kind of their who they are as humans?
Yeah. Well, I feel like, the more you find your center, the more you really like look at what might be handed to you that was just not true, not true. The more you look at where you're off, the more you come into a place of stillness, the more they can just be who they are instead of be a reaction to you. And I mean, there's so much joy when you come to a place where you can like stop holding other people accountable to what you believe. And kids are really good at picking up on what you believe about them and then showing you what nonsense that is.
They are our biggest mirrors, aren't they? Yeah,
they are. They really are. So I've also, and this is on a lighter note, I've also been incredibly curious, very curious about who these creatures are instead of them being mine. Like I have a understanding of the soul being vast and consciousness being vast and our awareness of our purpose in this world being something we come fully in with. And when we were raising our generation, and I give our generation a lot of credit, is not raising sleepy children. We are raising children who feel, who think, who ask lots of questions. They are sensitive. The boys are sensitive. The girls are sensitive. And there is so much room for these beings to be full spectrum in thought, feeling, and action. And it's a lot of work on our part as parents. But we are raising them to not go to sleep. We're raising them to kind of be very conscious all the time. And so who are they? That's like very exciting to me, like how you can find out who your children are in the like the arena of the universe. That's very exciting when you start getting information about them like that.
Right.
And helpful.
Now, Bonnie, were you raised, so I know you and I were raised pretty differently. I was raised very, anchored in science. You have to prove things. When I had gifts myself, but I remember my mom being very uncomfortable with that. So she would say, stop it. You're just trying to get attention. So I learned early on that I really had to have the science and the facts to back up anything, and to kind of be skeptical about things that I couldn't prove. I was raised that way. And it was my kids that awakened me to that intuition, trusting that intuition, and trusting and really understanding who I was, and that who I was okay. And not feeling like I had to put masks on to hide who I was to be acceptable to society,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And I believe you were raised pretty, I wouldn't say hippie, but like more, where there was, I know I've met your parents. They're amazing. And you were raised kind of with like Reiki and alternative things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my very early beginnings, though, we were in a Catholic church that was involved in what was called the Pentecostal Movement, and we had like basically we had like a folk mass in the basement, and that's where all the hippies went. They weren't really hippies though, because they were really really Catholics, right?
Yeah.
But they were just Catholics that were just wanting to sing and dance and praise and focus on love. So we used to have these prayer meetings in our house when I was young, and people would come and lay their hands over each other and pray. And I was young enough and open enough to feel like this great light descend upon the home. And it's just always associated, beyond God, this love and this light. So it kind of, the word God always felt small, but I was in a situation where people were really open to experiencing this energy, So as my parents got older and they got into studying psychology more, because they wanted to break free from their own social, limitations concerning like addiction and abuse, they got into more psychic studies, and they kind of made some friends with people who were in more metaphysical realms, because in the 80s that all broke open. It just broke open. There was
not in my world.
There was so much, in the 80s a lot happened to open us up at the beginning of that. Like Shirley MacLaine, believe it or not, being one of these people who was like, hey, there's some stuff going on. And so I was just going very conservative, as you're talking about, in my life, but my feelings and my emotions and my sensitivity was getting heightened. And so I found my way into yoga in college, and then I found my way into Reiki through a friend of my parents. And it was a very important time for me to find it, because I was kind of feeling really unsourced and dark, and very, very depressed at that point. I kind of ran out of my juice, if you want to know. But my parents didn't just send me to therapy. They also had this idea that my energy wasn't right, and that I needed help energetically. And so the actual woman who I met, who was a Reiki master, she also taught yoga, but she taught it in the convent in my town. So I don't know how I ended up in this little pocket of Catholicism, where I kept meeting all these groovy priests and nuns that were actually like also seekers, and expanding that. Today I don't have that Catholic connection, but my foundation kind of comes from this kind of place where the Holy Spirit kind of broke open.
Yeah.
My life
That's
foundation.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And you brought that to your kids, and I know my kids adore you, and my kids always feel safe around you. And you were very foundational. And my husband, we all attribute you as being just a very solid grounding force in our life that helped us with that grounded awakening ourselves. So I thank you for that. And
I have a quick funny story, Jen. One day, my father, who was very Catholic, my father-in-law, came over, and my son was like 7 or 6 or something, and he was going through his wallet, all the pictures. Remember, we used to put the pictures in the wallet? And he saw this picture, and he says, "Grandpa, I didn't know you knew any hippies. Who's this hippie?" my father-in-law was like, "Jesus?"
I could see your son doing that. That's
I was like,
hilarious.
oh, I think I
Jesus was
need to tell them some things here.
yeah, the original hippie, right? Oh, that's
I
funny.
think I've
That's
gotten
funny.
really off track here. They know who Kuan Yin is and Buddha, but they don't know Jesus.
Yep. Oops. Lucy, you got some explaining to do.
Yeah, and she was like, wait, are we Buddhists? What are we? I'm like, I have
What
no
are
idea
we?
what we are. We're happy.
We're happy. We are enlightened.
We're just
Yeah,
gonna follow the happy trail.
that's so funny. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So that's a great segue into, obviously I know for me being a medical practitioner, it's kind of a little bit easier for me to navigate the world with my husband. And speak in a way that he can understand and that medical practitioners can understand and all that. Because I believe that I've learned to bridge those gaps between intuition and science and between allopathic medicine and holistic medicine and healing. But what I mean, it's interesting that you wound up in a career where you are in the hospitals and you're using your gifts of that sort of mind body medicine, and helping to bring that in. And that happened actually, I would say you were on like the cutting edge of when this movement was starting. Um,
Mhm.
and so my question to you is, what do you think the key is to balancing that science and that intuition so people can understand and follow along and
Mhm.
yet not, like I teach now and you've been in my classroom, but one of the biggest things when I'm teaching my class about holistic and complementary and alternative approaches to health and healing, one of the biggest challenges to getting Western medicine and people that are overthinking, logical, very sort of grounded in science, but lack that spiritual connection or that openness to something more. So they're very left brain. They
Mhm.
don't know how to integrate that right brain.
Right.
And one of the challenges to getting sort of people to not dismiss some of those mind body practices, is the need for the call for more research and more replicability. But one of the foundations is really that individuality and understanding that everybody is different. So it's hard for research, you have to replicate data. You have to have the same sort of replicable data. And that's what makes it believable because it's the same results. But as we know, there is an intuitive piece, there is an experiential piece, there is an energy piece, an open piece. So how have you found working in that realm and really trying to also bridge those gaps? What have you found to kind of be that connected piece between the two?
Well, I think one of the reasons why I've been able to navigate through things the way I have is because I have an incredible respect for healthcare professionals and how they are trained. And my husband is 100% in his thinking almost all the time. He has to be exactly right, not off at all. If
Right,
you operate on someone and you're off at all, you nick something, it's
right.
devastating. Like the
Yeah. You want
consequences
that
for
for a
him.
surgeon.
Yeah,
You want them to be perfectionistic.
right. The consequences for a healthcare professional to make a mistake are there's no room for that. And
Right.
so everything is designed for things to be controllable. And in
Mhm,
acute settings, like, when you're entering a hospital for, any traumatic injury or serious advanced illnesses, things need to be handled exactly the same every time so that you can minimize on mistakes, right? So I
mhm,
completely understand that. And so the realm of integrative care isn't for those acute settings necessarily. It's what happens to those people before they're engaged in those situations, what happens when they go home, what happens when they go to have fun. This idea of like compassion fatigue, of being
mhm,
so caught in that being having to do everything right that you can't relax. You can't get out of that when you're
mhm.
done. And
Right.
so I've really enjoyed teaching people who are very left brained how to be sensual,
Mm,
basically, how to
mhm.
use their senses again, how to
Right.
breathe, how to feel their bodies, how
Right.
to eat food slowly, because there's no time for even eating for like
Right.
4 or 5 years. They don't even eat slowly.
Right.
And they don't do anything
No, I
slowly.
know. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
they're being trained to be these, the very specific way, and it really works because we're very good at that. But then there's this untraining and putting them back into their fields of their sensuality and intuition. And I believe that anyone who goes into healthcare has already coming in with all the gifts of a healer. I've
Yeah.
never met anyone in healthcare who wasn't innately a healer and
Right.
didn't innately have these impulses or these instincts.
Hmm.
And most of them already even trust them.
Yeah.
Someone falls down, some people go like this, and some people rush in.
Yeah.
And the people who rush in are, the people who are going into that realm, that
Right.
field. And so they're also rushing in with their hearts too. So when I trained, medical students, I had a chance to spend time with them every year. Medical students would rotate through the center, and they would try all these different modalities, and they would try yoga, and they would try Reiki, and they would come in, kind of like this. But by the end of that semester, they were so open because they
Yeah.
had experiences.
Yep.
And a lot of their training is not experiential until
Right.
they get into like the hard stuff where they're dealing with people in pain. But for them to experience how to breathe, how to relax, that was very important to them. So they were very open. I never found them to be, completely shut down, because
Right.
innately they're healers.
Yeah.
So I hope I kind of answered.
Yeah. No, definitely. In fact, it makes me think of, I remember my husband talking to him, um, which, you've trained him in Reiki. I've worked with him in Reiki, and he says sometimes he feels called to put his hands on people, and he's much more open now because of our own experiences. He's much more open to, other things and other ways of, that maybe he can't explain, but he trusts implicitly because he trusts me implicitly. But it was interesting because he was talking about training the fellows. So he's the head of fellowship and training the fellows. And he was talking about how he teaches them to trust their intuition, how the science might tell them to go a certain way and approach something a certain way, but how, especially after you've gotten some experience, you learn to trust that gut feeling or that intuition that tells you, you know what? I think I'm going to try a different approach, or I think I'm going to go a different way. And he teaches them to trust that. So
Mhm.
that's really what we're talking about, is sort of that you have the knowledge and the science, but yet, to your point, connecting, embodying, and allowing that sensation to inform your choices as well. And
Yeah,
that embodiment, I mean, for me, I teach people how to reset their nervous system,
right.
which is by doing that with the breath and then tuning into their body, then they're able to calm that fight or flight, that survival, and really tune into what is it that they need and what is it that they're, being called to do. And I think sometimes when we get so disconnected from that, we get out of alignment of what our soul and our spirit requires of us, of what we came to do, because we're sort of following this path that somebody else has laid for us. And that's when we get that compassion fatigue, or that's when we get that burnout, because we are showing up, and we are showing up without being allowed to really feel and connect, and um use our intuition to dictate what we do, what we don't do, how we approach something, how we don't. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that
Um,
calls something really simple to mind. A very simple thing that I think I've taught a lot of people in healthcare is, when you're in a hospital room with a patient and you're talking to them, just hold their feet. Like, go to the
yes.
head of that. I'm just going to put my hands on your feet. Is that okay? And they'll be like,
Yeah.
okay. And just that connection of their
Right.
hands on your feet in particular creates a different stream, a different energy. And
Yeah.
then also the simple intention of, I want to connect to the greatest
Mm,
energy possible in this
yeah.
space. Not only what I believe is greater than me, but what they believe is greater than them. And if you just touch someone with that intention, and you're quiet before you do anything else, you will come from a different place. You will ask different questions, and
Yeah.
they will tell you different things.
Yeah.
And that opens
Absolutely.
you up at a whole different level, because now
Right.
you're communicating on the level of a soul and of
Yes.
your energy. And we do it far more than we give ourselves credit for. We really do.
And
it's very simple.
humans need that connection. And I think we've also kind of created this society where it's not okay to touch people, that you have to, that this fear almost of touch and this discomfort of touch.
Yeah.
And I know you've
Well, you're
shared
actually
stories.
more and more. One of the reasons why I'm not in the hospital anymore is because this field is being taken more seriously. And now there is this license to touch issue. So I'm not licensed to touch. You are, because you have a health, because of your
Right.
degrees. I don't
Yeah.
have that. So
Right.
I was no longer actually appropriate in the arena of teaching in the way I used to teach.
Yeah.
Thank goodness I've taught enough people who do have license
Yeah.
to touch, and they are doing that work. So I kind of got in at the right time, and
Yeah.
then I was, I knew my time was kind of up,
Yeah.
because I didn't want to go to school for that.
Right.
But the reason why that's happening is because money is starting to go there, right? So there has to be some control of who's going to
Right.
get that money through insurances and so forth. And
Right.
so they're using those licenses as like those governing channels. And
Yeah.
at first I was upset, but now what I really believe is, wait a minute, we're taking this seriously as a modality. We are studying
Right.
it. We're placing attention. When I touch someone, something happens. It
Yeah.
happens. And
Yeah.
that's being acknowledged on some level. And we're in a little murky world with it, but I think it's becoming more and more important that who are you, what are you doing when you touch someone?
Right.
Are you allowed to touch someone? This is really important, because people have been mishandled for a very long time.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I have people that come to see me, and when I do the energy work on them, I ask them, is it okay? Like I've had people that have had cancer, so they're wearing wigs, and I ask if it's okay. And it's funny because I have people that ask me, is it okay if I hug you? Like at the end. And it's funny because I remember going through some of my training, um, like with my whole health education, and being told not to hug, not to touch, not to all that stuff. And I thought, are you kidding me? Like,
right,
we just did powerful energy work where we got to some of the root things, the emotional things that people have stored in their bodies and are ready to release. And after that, there's almost like an intimacy that you have with the person.
yeah,
And
yeah,
if somebody wants to hug me, I'm going to hug them.
yeah, yeah,
That touch is key. Even with my kids, going back to our kids, I
yeah,
remember my oldest was very kind of prickly and really would push me away and push me away. And I felt so rejected by it. So I wouldn't try to hug him or wouldn't try to touch him. And I remember having a life coach say to me, I want you to think of this. He loves you so much that it makes him uncomfortable. So he's pushing you away, but he really needs your touch and your connection. And so I would hug him, and I would, just say, I know this makes you uncomfortable, but I need this right now. And ask him for touches. And it's funny because my youngest is always giving me hugs. My third will come up behind me and do like a little chokehold kind of a thing. But I'm like, oh, you love me. And I get it. It's like, that's his way. Yeah. And then I'll be like, too much. Love me less. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But touch is so important. And I
yes,
have 4 boys. You have the 1 boy, and we have very compassionate boys.
yes.
Now going into, because I know you
But
have
there
to
are a lot
go.
of children who are so dynamic
Mhm,
energetically that they
mhm.
don't actually need. I mean, their touching is like loud music, right? And
Yes,
so
yes,
when
yes.
you do Reiki on them, you can't really be
Yep.
on them.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
I
You do.
notice, because even the field of Reiki has changed more. I mean, there's a lot of Reiki I do now because of COVID. Been doing a lot of Reiki over the phone,
Yeah,
and
me
it's
too.
pretty dynamic.
It is.
And
Yeah,
especially the young kids, like they're pretty wired. Like what
yeah,
I ask, a 17 or 18-year-old to do, what they can do like this
yeah,
is very different than what I could ask a 50-year-old to do.
yeah.
Like they're right
Y
there. I did a treatment on a young a friend of Maya's yesterday, and first of all, I said, is it all right if I touch you? Yeah, I have to ask.
Yeah.
It's really important. And then he closed his eyes. I gave him a visualization, and he opened his eyes. He goes, "That's how it works?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "That's cool. I can do that."
Yeah.
Like,
Right?
it was almost like I was just reminding him.
Yep.
He's like,
Yep.
"That's it?" I was like, "That's it."
They are more open to it. I feel like my teen and young adults, they are able to kind of get those visualizations and go there. Whereas some of the adults have a really hard time shutting off that
Yeah,
overthinking brain. They're like trying to analyze what's happening while it's going on. And I have to almost remind them, okay, just come back to your breath. But
yeah,
yeah, it is pretty
yeah.
powerful.
Their internal fields are more developed than, and maybe it's because they're constantly they're used to going into a computer and being in another, being able to access other realms all the time.
Yeah.
The computers have opened up our brains.
Yeah.
The more we have available to us, the more we're using different parts of our brain. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
There's even these translators now. I can go up to anyone in the world with my phone
Right.
and I can
Yeah. We
communicate.
had that in Spain, actually, where the guy that was giving us the apartment didn't speak English. So he was translating his phone. It's brilliant. Yeah,
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
it is.
So, but then there's
So,
other things to that is not good, but whatever.
yeah, right, right. Well, but that kind of segues into my next question, which is
Yeah.
really about fear and
Yeah.
worry. As
Mhm.
moms, we
Yeah.
can get very caught up in fear and worry when they're little. We kind of have a little bit more control over our kids' lives. As they get older and they start wanting that independence, which we want for them, right? We want them to go out and be independent. Then it's that letting go that sometimes can trigger some of that fear and panic. I know you've experienced some of that. I know with COVID, there have been a lot of fear and panic and with uncertainty, which
Yeah.
we are living in uncertain times. With uncertainty, a lot of times that will bring up sort of the fear and panic because people feel like they're out of control and they need to know. It's like, I need to know what the future is going to hold and all that. So I'd love to just speak a little bit about that. What are some of the challenges that you face right now, like as a mom, as a
Yeah.
woman,
Sure.
as a person,
Yeah,
practitioner?
my older kids are out in the world. My oldest lives in Colorado. My son will be moving out to Colorado in a few months. And that spaciousness, right? I mean, when I'm teaching a class right now, just to how to use Reiki with parenting.
Yeah.
And one of the things one of the questions I ask is, think about in your life when you were like a teenager, who did you feel really comfortable with? Like, who inspired you?
Yeah.
Who was cool? Like, you don't, as a parent, you don't want to be cool, but what you'll
Yeah, you
find
do.
is the people that really affected you were not afraid of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
They looked at you and they said, "Oh man, yeah, motorcycles are awesome." Like, no, they're not. My husband did a trauma fellowship. Let me tell you, I saw pictures. No,
Yeah.
motorcycles are really awesome. Like, that's,
Yeah. Oh,
but
yeah.
but it's the person who inspires you because they look at you and they're not afraid. They
Yeah.
see your energy and your potential, and they're like, "Oh my God, you are amazing. Let's go. Let's go." You know? And so as parents, I think one of the things that's really important to note that your worrying is a certain energy, it's a certain frequency, and it can be transmuted into something else that's more effective.
Yeah.
Worry is not love.
Mm.
Controlling someone isn't love. And that's why if you have a bigger sense of the soul and the purpose of the soul and what the soul's doing and what the soul needs to do. I was giving a reading to someone this week, and they're having trouble with this child. Well, the child shows up in the reading as training the parent. The parent
Yeah.
isn't training the child. I said, "Does your child make you feel like this, and that?" Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
You are with a master. I think almost all of us who are parenting right now need to acknowledge, what would help is we have all these masters here that are young.
Mhm.
They are coming in with a big mission. They're not coming in for their own reasons. They're coming in because things have to come down and they have to be
Mhm.
built up, and it has to happen really quickly. They have
Mhm.
30 years to reorganize everything on this planet. They know it.
Mm.
They come in knowing it. We're not quite sure. We're not on board yet. They know. And
Yeah.
that's why they're so good at communicating and moving and thinking at the same time, because they're going to have to change things really fast. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, they're going to disrupt stuff. They're going to
Yeah.
say, this food is crap. This makes me sick. I don't like this environment. I don't want to spend money on school, whatever. We need to
Yeah.
pay attention to our herbs and what are the medicines that are from the earth that are going to help open our minds up instead of put us to sleep. I mean, they have a lot
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you really listen, Jen. That's what's amazing about you. I mean, you're
Thank
really
you.
curious. You are so
Yeah.
curious. And you also know really deeply how hard it is
Yeah.
for people to not be afraid in their mothering and their parenting, because you went to the edge
Yeah.
of of the lives of your children, on several occasions, and it's a really scary place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. And one of the biggest people say to me all the time, like, okay, what would you say the biggest lesson is that you've learned? And there's been several, but one of the big ones is you never know what you're capable of until you're faced with it. You
Right.
never know. So
Right.
don't underestimate or sell yourself. I used to say that, well, like I remember with Ollie going into the the neurology things for checkups and looking at all the bald kids and, the kids in the wheelchairs and thinking, well, at least I don't have that. And then a couple years later, I was, Brody, my son was diagnosed with cancer. And I realized that my other son actually had a cerebral palsy event. That's the
Yeah.
anoxic brain injury. And I thought, okay, well, I'm handling it, right? I
Yeah.
remember looking at, having a bad day and walking into the Jimmy Fund clinic with my son to get his treatment and thinking like, I don't know how much more I can handle this. Like
Yeah.
this is so hard. And walking in and seeing families crying because they just were told that there was no other treatment for their child, that they couldn't
Mm.
save their child or seeing a child. And I thought, well, and I remember praying and saying, well, first of all, thank you for this perspective. But second of all,
Right.
please don't challenge me by taking my child away. You were
Right.
with me when I was
Yes.
at that edge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes, and this is our calling. And one of the big things, and I name every year, and this for me is the year of flow. I want to move with more ease and grace in my life
Hmm.
and let go of that tight grip on the steering wheel. And I do
Hmm.
a good job sometimes, but then there are those moments where I'm like, oh, I don't want to go that way, and I grab onto that steering wheel, or I see my kids going in a direction and I want to save them from pain.
Yeah.
And I had a human design reading, and one of the powerful things that they said to me was, you have the answers. You know how to fix things. You see things very quickly and can fix things for people. But you cannot fix things for people unless they ask you to step in,
Right.
because that's part of their journey, is the figuring out. Just like
Yeah.
I figure out by doing, we rob our children of that opportunity to learn and grow, and experientially, and then intuitively connect intuitively when we sweep the path for them,
Yeah.
when we fix it for them. So as much as, there are risks riding that motorcycle, yeet, or, surfing or skydiving. My son's going into the Marines.
I
I'm going to
know.
put a giant Reiki bubble around him,
I
but
know.
it's his path. And I just have to trust. This is where that spiritual connection comes in. I have to trust that I have given him all of the tools that he needs to thrive,
Yeah.
and that what he doesn't have, he's going to gain. And some of the hardships and the challenges that he goes through, that's where he's going to gain more of those tools for what his purpose is.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts as far as how do we flow more in life and let go a little bit more and
Well,
trust?
I think I want to just, kind of mirror back to you that you've always been a very contagious, joyful person. Like if there is a way of
Thank you.
making something funny or laughing or blowing it up or calling what it is and letting it all go. I mean, you are so willing to find the joy and the laughter. It just comes up naturally for you. And I think that's one of the things that your kids are going to absolutely take into the world. Like, they will find the opening for joy. They will find the opening for the lightness and to just the appreciation. And so you're not only willing to feel the spectrum of that suffering, but you're also willing to go the whole other end of just joy and fun. And you're great fun.
Thank you.
There's this beautiful thing that Brene Brown wrote, and it's called the
Love her.
Wholehearted Parenting Manifesto. And maybe you can post that.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Send that to
this
me. I'll
is
put it in the links.
really, really brave parenting right here.
Yeah.
This is really brave parenting. And there's this, when I read it every time I cry, and I cry different points in it. But there's one paragraph that says, "Together we will cry and face fear and grief. I will want to take away your pain, but instead I will sit with you and teach you how to feel it."
Oof.
You can't do that with your kids if you're not doing your stuff. And the more out of and wild the kids are, the more work, internal work, we have to do as parents. You can't just send your kids to get all this help and put them on medication and then not have a place where you're not talking about your soul and what's happening to you and what you're feeling. It doesn't, because the kids pick up on your center. They pick up on where you are, So
it's the vulnerability piece, right? I mean, I just had this
that's
conversation with my oldest, who called and stuff isn't going the way. And there are times, especially when you're a deep soul, where you feel like you're surrounded by people, but you're lonely.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's that vulnerability of sharing with him. I felt that way. I still feel that way as an adult. I felt that way my whole life growing up. And there are moments where there's tremendous joy and where there's fun and you're a part of things and you're in it. And then there are moments where you're just like, I don't feel like I fit here.
Yeah.
And
Because
you just got to sit in those moments.
Listen. Ultimately you're learning how to listen to your own inner compass.
Yes.
And the deeper you go in listening to that, the more you get to create new pathways.
Yeah.
Which is very exciting and needed at this time. A lot of the kids that are out there right now, they have a lot of mental illness. And people are like, what's wrong? And we have stuff going on with our society and with the devices and all of that. But I think they're going through their stuff early. What they're going through at 16, 17, 12, 13, whatever, people used to go through that in their 40s and 50s. They're getting all this emotional intelligence done early. By the time they're in their 30s, they're going to have a lot figured out already. They will have cleared a lot. They will have noticed what's true, what's not true, what's energetically correct, what's in alignment, what's their true center, their true north, because they got stuff to do.
Yeah.
So I say be patient with those kids. Keep giving them, a lot of things. Get them in nature. You're really good about that too, Jen. I mean, you are so great about celebrating nature and being out in nature. I can't imagine your kids with any other mother who couldn't keep them all moving at the same level you've kept them all moving. I mean, your energy is amazing for that. But being in nature completely helps to organize these intense and complicated emotional fields with these advanced souls.
Yeah.
So, I think that's important too.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I want to say you look really beautiful.
Well, thank you. It's the purple and this scarf that my mother-in-law gave me.
Long hair and, moms, it's hard, but you got to, just enjoy and take care of yourself.
Yes.
Wash the hair and go get the.
I know, right? I love when people say to me, did you get a haircut? Right. People will be like, did you get a haircut? I'm like, no, I just washed it. I know it's a rare thing, but
I put on moisturizer.
I know, right? You just reminded me your Brene Brown Manifesto, which I love. I remember, so as you know, I've been working on a book about my kids called The Mothers Love Kids. And I just recall that I wrote this pledge to my kids, my grandkids, and the kids in the world. If you would,
I would love
I want to read this. Yeah, I just haven't read it in a while. So
I would love to read that. That would be great.
I am putting it says, in all of my struggles, mistakes, and failures, I have learned great lessons about life, morality, humanity. I have discovered what strength and resilience truly is. As hard as it is to watch you struggle, I pledge to you that I will stand by you, support you, help you process, and love you through your successes, failures, celebrations, and sorrows. I pledge that I will not walk in front of you sweeping your path, but help you find the strength to continue, knowing I am there by your side. I pledge to encourage you to spread your wings, take risks, and problem solve, as this is how you discover who you are, your own strengths and challenges. As there are times to be serious, play is vital to life. I pledge to you to never forget my sense of play or the beauty of laughter. I pledge to you to keep play and laughter a part of your world and never balk when you remind me of this pledge. I pledge to not take myself too seriously and to encourage you to be able to laugh at yourself and your own silliness. As perfection is a destination many set their course for, but one full of disappointment and constant rerouting, as it is not attainable. I pledge to you to embrace my imperfections with self-awareness, self-compassion, and authenticity. I pledge to you to work my hardest to help you embrace yours and know what you are as well as what you are not. As no one is perfect and we all make and hopefully learn through mistakes and disappointments, I pledge to you to be vulnerable, have the courage to admit when I am wrong, as this takes strength and integrity. I pledge to you to celebrate your courageous vulnerability and help you see the beauty and power of its expression. As being heard and having the ability to speak your truth is paramount to a sense of value, empowerment, and importance, I pledge to you to always do my best to mindfully listen, help you feel heard, and help you learn to express yourself in a way that people can truly hear. I pledge to do my very best to offer you informed choices and a voice in things pertaining to you and impacting your well-being. As this is an area in need of growth for me, particularly when I get stressed, I pledge to you to have the courage to hear criticism and communicate my needs and to work to ground myself so I can truly be present for you. I pledge to teach you techniques so you can ground and center your own energy so you can be present for yourself and for others. I pledge to practice self-care so I can selflessly care for you.
You couldn't have read anything more powerful on your birthday. I mean, when we have a birthday, it means the stars are lined up a certain way. I mean, we came barreling into the world, right, on this day, and we get this imprint by landing here at this moment. And when we return to that every year, we get to broadcast. That's what the birthday wish is about. And
Yeah.
so to read that pledge today is just amplifies everything you just said.
Thank you.
I'm just so happy to celebrate you today in this way and broadcast your fabulousness into the world.
On 2/2/22.
Woo!
This is a powerful number.
It
This is a
is.
powerful number. It's new beginnings. It's the works.
Beginning. Yes.
Yeah.
And this
So
month
cool.
is very powerful for anything that we do towards our own self-care. Very important month for our shifting towards that. There's a lot going on.
Yes,
but
there is.
You is what today's all about.
Thank you, my love.
Yes,
is there anything you want to leave our people with? We didn't have a ton of people join us, but I know people are going to catch this on the replay.
Yeah. Well, I'm here, and if you just look me up, it's easy to find my website. Just type in my name.
BonnieTarantino.com, right?
That's right. And if you want
for me, it's JenniferRentolo.com.
You want a little peek around the corner?
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at peeking around the corner.
You are great at peeking around the corner. Yeah, so Bonnie and I do readings for each other. When we're sort of having an off time or we just need a little clarity, we will call each other and say, hey, can you flip some cards for me, or can you give me a little read, a little tune in? It's really beautiful.
We actually say, it's a shit show here. What the fuck's going on?
What's going on? Right.
And then we say,
what's going on?
Go in your room and close the door. Get under the bed. Hold your crystals to your heart. I have no idea what's going on.
Oh, Bonnie and I just celebrated with each other. We got to see each other after all this craziness.
Oh my gosh, in Nashville.
Where COVID didn't hit Nashville.
We had so much fun. Yes.
I remember walking into that one place and you said, can you breathe out of your asshole? Because I'm afraid to take a breath. And
Jen,
then
Jen like handed me a Jello shot, and I was like, knocked it back. I was like, that's the best thing I've had in a long
these are good. And then you proceed to go,
give me a couple of those Jello shots. And like 3 later, I was like, okay, I had enough Jello shots.
Our poor husbands don't know what to do with us when we get together. It's hilarious. It's
We
hilarious.
revert right back to our sex.
And then we bring our girl Tracy into the mix, and we put a little South in there, and
Shout out to
she's
Tracy.
always down for
He's
everything.
never on Facebook, so.
I know.
All right,
Well,
enjoy
I
the
thank
chat.
you for joining me, and thank you all for joining us. And if you want to reach out or have any questions, you can put them in the chats, or you can reach out to us individually. Bonnie, I don't know if you want to. Well, I would say go on Tarantino.com, and you can figure out how to connect with her. Or for me, it's JenniferRentolo.com, and you can figure out how to connect with me. But thank you. Many blessings. Thank you for celebrating my birthday with me.
Hold on.
Oh,
Say happy birthday to Jen.
Hey, good girl.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye, honey.
Bye. Love you.
Love you.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for showing up, and stay tuned for more Grounded Awakenings.
Love it. Bye, honey.